Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the official QRL Show Live, the place where you come for the crypto and stay for the quantum. And appreciate you joining myself and Michael Strike from the QRL core team. As always, if this is your first time joining our official QRL live show, every few weeks we have a live show where we cover a ton of different topics. Sometimes we have uh, host of topics that we're covering or some news items. Other times we have a central focus for the episode. Other times we have a guest, whether it's say our lead developer, post quantum expert, fill in the blank. But today's episode is really going to be heavily focused around the inconvenient truths behind migrating blockchains to post quantum security. So we'll cover stuff on migrations, freeze, no freeze camp, timelines, what's real and what's not, everything in between. And so before we get into that, Michael, it's good to have you on with me and have this
Yeah,
latest
yeah,
live show.
thanks.
How you doing, Michael?
Uh,
Good.
Great, I'm great. Today we're going to be covering some of the. This is going to be some unique content. Honestly, we're going to be talking about the things that crypto Twitter or crypto X is not talking about. The topics are important, they're relevant, they're existential, and they're really just not discussed. And we're gonna cover some of those truths. And I encourage our viewers to take some of the things that we're talking about, do your own research, or dump it into your favorite AI. Not saying that that's the source of truth, but
You can pull
um,
stuff quick though, and then
you
make
can
make
do some quick
make truth
research.
of it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no, for those viewing, as Michael just alluded to, we're going to be covering some different stuff. I think if you're viewing, you might be listening on audio, maybe you're watching on video on the side as you're in your, the Discord server. If we talk on any topics where we mention something, it might be good to take down notes, whether it's old school pen and paper, or even take a screenshot of something or jot something down in your notes on iOS or Android that you can reference back to, because there's a ton of areas where you can kind of go down a rabbit hole to research in each of the areas. So, for example, when we talk on some of the hybrid post quantum approaches, if we talk on pros and cons of uh, timelines from classical to quantum, and then not all coins migrating, and people might have some questions around that. So, really, you taking some notes or even just screenshotting, hey, they talked about this at the 4 or 6 minute mark. It can be helpful to go back to that. And if you are tuning into this, whether you are a longtime QRL community member, or if you're someone that is now in tune from the retail institution side, anyone in between, and you've come across the quantum threat and you're like, okay, hey, I want to take this seriously. I'm into the blockchain space and I want to have alpha on what is to come. We're going to be discussing topics today, as Michael just alluded to, that are at the core of the direction of where
yeah,
blockchain is going. And
yeah.
for those of you that don't know, our project QRL, we've been a pioneer in the space since day one in 2018. We've been post quantum secure since Genesis Block. And as many of you know, viewing this over the past 12 to 18 months, especially, the blockchain industry and much more of the world is really starting to come around to the importance of post quantum across the board. And so, what Michael and I are going to dive into deep today is we're going to unpack the meaning behind when a project might say, well, we're post quantum, or we've bolted on post quantum this or post quantum that. There's a lot of nuance there, and that nuance really matters. So, I think, Michael, before we jump into the core of what we're going to talk about today, there's just a couple, as we do on the QRL show, we kind of cover a few brief news items. So, I think what I'm going to do is just going to pop up on screen here. We got we're going to do a little quantum news corner. The core of today's episode is going to be around covering those inconvenient truths behind migrating blockchains to post quantum security. We'll do a little Q&A and then just wrap up as we do at the end. But just a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. First one, we'll just cover real quick, 1 or 2 minutes on Quantum News Corner. Recently, within the last week or so, Department of Commerce announced letters of intent. So we'll see exactly. This isn't like 100%. We'll see how it plays out. But um, you know, investment in a handful of companies, 2 billion to accelerate, U.S. leadership in quantum computing. I think my take on this one is just it just ties to the technology race with China and making sure that the U.S. is trying to invest in quantum computing, in chips, et cetera. Michael, anything to add to this one? I think that we've kind of seen this trend in further investment, whether it be in the private sector or from governments themselves. But anything to add to this one? I just had a couple brief notes on that one.
To domestic quantum foundry companies. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's under the Chips and Science Act.
Yeah. But 7 quantum computing companies to accelerate solving.
Yeah.
More and more capital is being obviously pushed into quantum. A lot of it's government funded, and
yeah,
we've talked about the state of this, what the true state of quantum computers is, and for me, it's always been it's not what you see online. It's like an iceberg. All of the tip of the iceberg is everything they see on social media, everything that you see in the news. But what's really relevant is probably what you can't see, which is classified information. And I suspect a lot of this funding is going in towards projects that are classified, and you'll see the announcements of this $2 billion being funded, but I don't think you likely won't get the results of the discoveries, of the progress, of the engineering improvements. But yeah, more and more funding.
Yeah, and we've been seeing this across the board. Fill in the blank. You go over to Europe, UK, the rest of the EU. You see this in Canada's had some recent investments, Australia, fill in the blank, but just overall, just goes to show, where money's getting put in. Next docket item, quantum news, obviously with, this came directly from NIST earlier, like within the last week or two since our last live show. If anyone wants to check this one out, this one's just titled, 9 candidates advanced to third round from the second of the additional digital signature for the PQC standardization process. So if anyone just types out that title there that I just read out, you can read that one, check it out yourself. They just list out kind of, hey, after 18 months of evaluation, they've selected the candidates for the third round. So that's one that people can check out as well.
Additional DSAs, right? There are already post-quantum secure DSAs that are NIST recommended, which QRL uses. So these are additional DSAs that are being taken under consideration.
Yep. So that's quantum news. We'll quickly cover a little bit of crypto catch up, and then we'll get really into the heart of the episode. So in crypto catch up, Strike, we saw this one on crypto Twitter or blockchain Twitter. I'll read it out for those that are listening in their earbuds. This was from a few days back. Anonymous holder burns 107 Bitcoin across 5 time block transactions. Then it reads out, an anonymous holder burned 100 plus Bitcoin worth 8.5 million USD on May 26th by sending it to the famous unspendable address, and shows it's time locked at a certain block, originating from a wallet that's been dormant since 2014 or 2015, and it just shows the burn address sits on 800 plus Bitcoin, and the comment here was that Bitcoin developer and OG Adam Beck called an accidental quantum bounty, but there's a little bit of talk on this one. I don't want to speculate too hard on this, but you shared this one with me, so I'm just kind of curious to.
So this is 0 day.
Yep. Yeah. What's your take on this one? Why would someone burn X number of million Bitcoin just for giggles, or what's that? What do you see in here potentially?
Okay, so Bitcoin developer Adam Beck called it an accidental quantum bounty. So I'm having a hard time with this one, specifically because these were 5 premeditated transactions that were timed.
Could you elaborate on what that means? Some of our audience might not.
Someone performed a transaction 5 times. If you're moving $8.5 million, you would do a transaction. Okay, let's just make sure this went through. You wouldn't just pump through 5 at a time. I mean, that just seems to be insanity. So I don't see this to me does not look like an accident. This looks like this looks like someone trying to send, I don't know, a message.
Send a message, weird behavior, maybe
We used to talk about what does it look like when a cryptographically relevant quantum computer starts to interface with the blockchain. And one of the things that we said is cryptographically, what you won't know first off, because a quantum computer that could essentially steal funds looks cryptographically online to the nodes and to the ecosystem as if the user were to perform this transaction. So really, you would not know.
Yeah.
Bitcoin nodes, for example, don't store the necessary metadata like source IPs or anything else that would link a transaction or a wallet to a specific person. Satoshi's white paper, original white paper, originally just called this out as ownership strictly just depends on being able to having access to the private key. So I don't see this as an accident. I see this as done purposeful, but for what purpose is unknown. One of the things that we have talked about in the past, though, however, is if someone it would likely be a nation state with the most funding, someone that when cryptographic or quantum computers become a thing, assuming they aren't already, but there's no data on that you would stay probably just under the radar of detectability, but just high enough to be highly profitable, right? So, but maybe that really just looks into sowing chaos into the blockchain, creating fear, uncertainty, and doubt as to what is going on, and having investor sentiment or ecosystem sentiment just become confused. And maybe that's a tactic. If things like this continue to happen in the next, continue as a reoccurring, we'll call it a plot theme for the next year or two, I think it'll start to draw a lot of attention and confusion. One of the best ways to discredit a technology or a value or a system is essentially confuse the heck out of the users so that they it's human nature to fear what's unknown, something that's uncertain, and maybe just confusion is the tactic. I don't know. It's speculative. This is 0 day, it came out, so not sure. It's weird.
Yeah, it's hard to tell here. I think just adding just for
$8.5 million.
Yeah,
under 5 transactions. It's not the 8.5 million. It's the 5 transactions that gives me pause.
Yeah, no, and to add to this too, for users that maybe are definitely on the less technical side too, it's not, or just anyone, it's not like when a sufficiently powerful quantum computer or computers has arrived and has started, going after some of these vulnerable addresses or fill in the blank with the situation. It's not like there's nothing written in, there's no note with that transaction where it's like a emoji raised hand saying, "Hey, by the way, I am a sufficiently powerful quantum computer." That is, it's not like that at all. So I think that, yeah, exactly. It's not.
It doesn't know the difference. There's no metadata.
Yeah.
It tells you what's generating the transaction or how it got the private key.
Yeah. So that one, I just wanted to cover that one briefly. I think why I'm really looking forward to getting into kind of the heart of what we're going to be talking about today. So for viewers, we're going to really get into it right now, which is covering a big portion of this live show episode on what we're calling, the inconvenient truths for migrating blockchain to post quantum security. So a number of these topics and areas that we're going to discuss, they could all be 30 or 60-minute full conversations in and of themselves, many of them. So what we're going to be doing in today's episode for those that are viewing this, whether you're brand new to the QRL project and trying to see, hey, is this where I want to build? Is this where I want to be a part of in terms of what I consider being, my post quantum play? Or, if you want to build on the project, fill in the blank. We're going to be covering a number of these. So I'm going to pull up on screen a couple different topic areas, and I'll read it out. And then Michael, we'll just kind of jam in it for a few minutes each, and we'll kind of just lead the conversation through there. But there's a lot of good ones in here. So this first one I have on here, I'll read it out for those that are just listening, and they can follow along just as well as the viewers on video. But the first one we got here titled "Hybrid Signatures Are Expensive Theater." What's this all about, Strike?
Yeah, I'm just checking my mic volume. There's a couple of notes in there that
Yep.
say that.
All good. Yeah.
My
If you even notch it up a little, I think it's pretty good. But yeah, so while
the
you're
sound
doing that for
okay?
a second, yep. Hybrid signatures are expensive theater. What's the added context to this one?
So one of the a lot of classical projects are talking about moving to post quantum security, as they should. But one of the things that isn't being discussed is the blockchains that are running at scale for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and there's many other chains. We'll just call it the top 10 or top 15. One of the things that's never talked about is moving to post-quantum security increases the computational and the transaction size, and thus the blockchain and ledger size. So I don't think that there's going to be a performance hit for computational order to process transactions.
Hmm.
However, CPUs are pretty fast, and GPUs could be incorporated. I don't think that that's going to be the biggest problem. Uh, However, post quantum security, and you can look this up through your favorite AI or whatever. Post quantum secure signatures, dilithium, Falcon, Sphinx, are 10 to 50 times larger than elliptical curve signatures. And this is going to, if a blockchain is running at scale, that's an economic and that is an economic and ecosystem advantage because that blockchain has succeeded. It's running at scale. But at the same time, with post quantum security, this starts to become a disadvantage because now you're making severe, if you're running at scale, you're going to have to make severe compromises on your transactions per second if if you are essentially running at a sufficient scale. So 10 to 50 times larger is nothing is significant. And this is going to increase, this is going to mean bigger blocks, potentially slower syncs, higher storage, and nobody has talked about that. Uh, Probably just because most chains are really just trying to get there. But the cost to the ledger size and the storage and the transactions per second is a major concern. I think that's underlooked.
Yeah. And I think it's a little, when we talk about the blockchain space in general, there's so many different projects and people have used different projects for different use cases as well. So, what weighing out the pros and cons is people bolt on stuff. It's going to be a little different per different projects. Even if you even taking this outside of like a quantum conversation, let's even go back to, you know, a number of years back. It's like, okay, hey, where you might not use, Bitcoin, even to this day, a lot of people don't use Bitcoin for, small things like buying a cup of coffee or other things, but they might use, Solana for something, quick transaction. But now when we move into adding additional stuff, I'm just you riffing on that one as a random, but it gets much more complex. I want to jump into this next one we have here because I think there's some interesting ones as we come along here. This next one, here we got this one: hybrid signatures, expensive
Let's go
theater.
back one second. I want to cover that
No, yeah,
expensive theater too, because I covered half of it.
yeah. No, continue.
There's a lot of there are many of the new projects that are coming out that claim to be post quantum secure. We're not going to run. We know how they are, but I'm not going to run through the names. But a lot of these post quantum secure claimed to be post quantum secure blockchains that have entered the market within the past 2 or 3 years most of them. I know of one that is not, but of every other one that I've seen, it's either an BRC20 by itself, which if the underlying L1 with Binance or Ethereum is not post quantum secure, I don't know how
And
you
that's
can
not
claim
post
post
quantum. Yeah.
security. But some of them are hybrid chains, and with the hybrid chain, you have an ERC20 or a BRC20 on one side, and this allows you DeFi capability with Uniswap, and essentially DeFi, you can interface with the DeFi ecosystem. So it gives you it gives you that, it gives you a classical advantage, but nobody ever talks about the cost of this, because on the flip side of that, the other side of the project is, okay, we also have our post-quantum secure L1 chain, which by itself, which is post-quantum secure, be it through whatever post-quantum secure DSAs or whatever it is that they use. But here's the problem. Half of the project is on ERC20, BRC20, and the other half of the coin of the same name. Well, one's actually, the one on Ethereum would actually be a token, and on the blockchain side, it would, once you're on their L1, it would be a coin, right? If half of it is on, or even 70-30, or even 80-20, if it's partially on an insecure a classical chain like Ethereum, you have to make a transaction at some point in order to move those ERC20 or BRC20s over to the post-quantum secure chain.
Yeah, because it's not out of the, the whole bag is not, or by bag I mean like that project is
but
not,
it's all labeled. It's all labeled as the same 3-letter ticker, right?
Yeah.
So, but there's, first off, the first issue I take with that is that's a fungibility problem. If one token on ERC20 is not post-quantum secure, and a coin on the other chain of the same name is post-quantum secure, this creates a difference in value, because they're secured under different levels of security. One's post-quantum secure, the other is not post-quantum secure. Okay, so eventually in the project roadmaps, what you'll see is, okay, we'll call it by 2029, we intend to have all of our users migrate over to our L1. But here's what nobody ever talks about, is that transaction is user initiated. If the ERC20 is owned by the user, the project itself cannot move that for you. The user has to do that.
There's a manual action. This ties to all of the messy. It might, even if it sounds hard in theory, it's 10x or 100x harder in the wild, because you're depending on human beings to all take the action you may assume that they should just naturally do, but that's not how human behavior at scale works.
And
I'm painting a broad brush there, but
yeah. And it's not just that, but think about that for a second. If you think about it, that's the same problem that Bitcoin has. Even with BIP 360 and 361 implemented, you have to create a new post-quantum secure transaction on Bitcoin from Bitcoin to Bitcoin, which is a user-initiated transaction. I'm presenting
for those joining us. Sorry, it's just it lagged for a second. Can a few other people have just joined in? Can you recap for 10-15 seconds on what we're covering for those that are just joining in?
Yeah, we're talking about we're discussing some of the problems with some of the projects that have come out, the inherent technical, I would say, quantum vulnerabilities of chains that say that they are post-quantum secure.
Yeah.
And the argument that I'm making is that with those chains that are hybrid, half of them exist on Ethereum. Let's just use Ethereum as an example.
It's a good example.
Let's just use Ethereum. The project's migration plan is, at some point, by some date, you move all of your ERC20s over to their post-quantum secure L1, and it has to be done by the user. But if you think about it, this is the same problem that Bitcoin has. Whether or not you're a user must initiate a transaction in order to move from an ERC20 over to an L1 that is post-quantum secure, which would be a post-quantum secure project, an unnamed one. Whether or not you're doing that, or you're doing a Bitcoin after BIP 360 and BIP 361 are implemented, and you can perform a post-quantum secure transaction. Whether or not you're moving from ERC20 to a post-quantum secure L1 from one chain to a different chain, or you're doing a Bitcoin migration, which is moving your funds from a quantum vulnerable address to a post quantum secure address, it's still a user transaction. I'm presenting the argument that essentially that it's essentially the same thing, that the user still has to go in and do something before an end date in order to be post quantum to be post quantum secure. And at some point, be it ERC20 on a claimed post quantum secure chain, or on Bitcoin of an address that is not post quantum secure, that must be user migrated, it's essentially the same problem. So why would projects do this? Well, it gives you access to DeFi. You can trade the ERC20 in Uniswap, and it gives you access to do that, and it increases your ecosystem exposure. QRL took more of a first principles approach, in that we didn't compromise on the post quantum security, which does create a bit of isolation, in that there is no bridging right now at this point in time in order to move between Ethereum and back and forth. It doesn't exist because that's a principles first compromise in post quantum security. You'd have to use a centralized exchange today. However, QRL 2.0, coming out relatively soon, currently being audited, fixes this approach by allowing EVMs, and will be able to bolt on post quantum secure transactions with legacy chains, assuming that legacy chain also has a post quantum secure EVM as well too, that you could interface well. It might actually even build EVMs that are classical on top of QRL 2.0. I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen because we maintain the consensus layer, and whatever transactions happen at the EVM is within the hands of the programmer. So
yeah,
my argument. So essentially, my thought is that the post quantum secure chains that are post quantum secure today, that claim post quantum security, essentially have the same problem as Bitcoin. The user has to make a transaction by X date, or funds get canceled, deleted, bit bucketed, whatever.
Yeah, and I think that as you said, Michael, earlier, we're not trying to pick out or name a name of XYZ project, but if you look at any of the projects that claim that they're moving, whether they're saying, "Hey, aspect of us is post quantum secure," or if a project says, "Hey, they're leading at the forefront of this," but maybe it's a ERC20 or fill in the blank. I'd say for 99% of those, if you even doing a small bit of research into them, you'll find that comes with some caveats, and it's not necessarily it doesn't mean it's fully necessarily post quantum secure. So that's important to keep in mind, especially if you're someone that's maybe listening to this and you're like, oh well, I have a bucket of an investment, or you're building and you're thinking about, well, where do I want to build next as a Solidity developer? Maybe you've already built some, Ethereum, smart contracts, or fill in the blank for your project, and you're thinking about, well, what do I want to do next? Just keep that in mind as you're thinking about what the real meaning and the nuance behind post quantum security is. It's important. Michael, we have a number of other ones I want to get to. I'm going to pop up the screen again, and I'll read it out for those listening here.
Does the volume sound okay? I had a couple messages.
No, I think it's okay. Anyone, please mention if Strike needs to notch it up a little bit. I can hear you
guys in Discord or something if my volume's off.
Yeah,
I sound fine over here to myself.
Yeah, I want to jump to this next one. So we just touched on that. Hey, hybrid post quantum secure blockchains, same issue as Bitcoin in terms of that manual actions have to take manual action, meaning like people manually have to do something in order to keep on the lifeboat, so to speak. Next one here, I'll read it out.
Or risk confiscation. You risk confiscation in both scenarios.
Yeah. Yeah, we could probably do a whole episode on the one of one coin versus another. Is that even equal? But we'll leave that let's save that one for a later one. I'll read out this next one.
I think we flip flopped these, Ryan. We covered let's go with this one instead.
Yeah. So this one reads out. So this is on timelines for classical blockchains is probably already too late. So we've touched on this in some prior episodes. Those that are viewing this may or may not be familiar. When it comes to when we've seen recently in the news cycles, whether it's Coinbase with their independent advisory board, or Ethereum, or fill in the blank with that they say, okay, well, by X number of year, everyone's got to be moved over. But the window, it's not like you say, hey, we have to be moved over by next year, and we have 364 days to kind of smoothly move stuff over. This stuff, these are big ships. It takes years in the making. So can you elaborate? Let's break it down a little bit, Michael. I know we talked on this a number of times, but for the whole spectrum of viewers, what does it mean by classical blockchains? It might already be too late by them in terms of the quantum threat. Let's cover it from what that means in general, and then we'll go in a little bit deeper.
There's a number of hurdles here. First off is the consensus, which is being worked on by Underbased and BIP 360, trying to get post-quantum secure digital signatures enabled and supported by the ecosystem, so that at least the post-quantum secure transaction on Bitcoin, I'll just use Bitcoin as an example, can be made. This is potentially still, I'm going to estimate earliest, maybe 2 to 3 years out. Past that, Bitcoin starts to have the ability for users to migrate their addresses to post-quantum secure address space. So just migrating all of the Bitcoin alone is going to take months to do, just to perform the transactions in order to make the address space post-quantum secure. Now, that doesn't even take into consideration the increased address size of post-quantum secure. That's just assuming that the addresses size stay the same. But there's going to be congestion at this layer, and some people have called it downtime. Some people have called it transaction time. But it's going to take months of Bitcoin processing just to be able to move over the address space.
And for those listening, this is just the one. This is not a few months of, hey, start and done, and then the world is happy and everyone's post-quantum after a couple months. Michael's talking about just this one aspect with it. Like there's more to it, as Michael's going to keep continuing on. So in terms of, yeah.
And as we know, one of Bitcoin's advantages is that it's at scale. It's highly popular, right? It is the blockchain. It is the original blockchain. But it's also slow. It takes forever to make it. It takes forever for the world to reach consensus. And ultimately, what I think we're going to see is numerous forks coming out based on different ideologies of how post-quantum secure gets implemented. This gets back to the freeze camp, no freeze camp. I'm almost certain that you're going to see different types of forks. And I also think that those forks are going to create some sort of financial chaos. For example, if you're a financial institution, you've got an ETF tied to Bitcoin.
Well, yeah. How's that gonna look?
What value does your ETF follow of which fork of Bitcoin?
Who makes that decision? Who's panicking, or when panic ensues on different aspects? How does that get moved? How does that impact what other people do? We're really tying into the human element here, but
there simply isn't enough time, and all it really takes in order to start to devalue the blockchain ecosystem, which is what 2.5 trillion, something like that right now, is even just the rumor or suspicious activity, kind of like what we saw today. I'm not suggesting that today's event was done by a quantum computer. I don't know.
Just broadly speaking, the direction. Yeah.
But honestly, with the amount of consensus that needs to be reached, the changes that need to be agreed upon, that need to be implemented, getting everyone to move over, and then eventually cutting off the old transactions, giving everyone enough time. People aren't going to want to pay high gas high Bitcoin transaction fees or high gas fees in order just to move over to post quantum secure. Some are going to have to wait. Some believe that quantum computers are still unicorns, and it's a frivolous endeavor. So not all coins will migrate, and eventually, I think this turns into property confiscation, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later. But there really just is not enough time.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying this as being part of the QRL project. These are my honest opinions.
Yeah, and overall, this just ties to, we've seen in the last, the kind of general perspective of a lot of people, of finally some people that were the most, let's say, if the camp was, hey, believer in being open-minded to the idea that, hey, we need to do something about this quantum threat, and if another camp on the other side of that would be the straight up denial of, this is fuddy, you guys are, it's 30-40 years out there, nothing's going to happen. If a lot of people on that side that were really dismissive of it have been starting to come around to it, even at a project level, the time to be acting for these projects was, as a number of our expert guests have said, the time to be acting was yesterday or a year ago. So
we've been saying the same. I've been talking about the same content for the past 5 or 6
yeah,
years.
half dozen years we've been saying this in different flavors.
At the end of the day, you can believe or not believe or whatever, but as far as the track record of what we've talked about, you can go back to the early episodes when quantum was not a household word. It was an unknown, and we're still talking about the same things. Ultimately, you want to align yourself with a project or with a group of people that are forward thinking and have a track record of just being correct. And we've never said that quantum computers will destroy blockchain. We've never said that, but we have said that our project is here to help the ecosystem and act as an ecosystem hedge in case what I view as an existential threat. The users may not view it as existential. Yeah. I do, but at the end of the day, we've made on-ramping your existing Ethereum project with QRL 2.0 still to come out as easy as possible, so that you'll be able to be post-quantum secure. And this is the migration plan that we put out. We want to help, we want to support and help the ecosystem. I've been in Bitcoin for years and years and years, since like 2013. I was mining, and I've been talking about this for 6 years, and the message hasn't changed. You can go back to the early episodes. So you want to align yourself with people that are forward thinking and have an accurate track record as far as predicting where the technology goes. And ultimately, that's what we're doing. And so far that has worked. So
yeah. And also within that, of checking out, earlier content, kind of see what that messaging is over time. Also, really pay attention to the foremost leaders, the Scott Aronsons, the Michele Moscas, the other guests that we've had on our QRL show, and just in general of where's the general direction of where the puck is headed. Don't just take our word for it, as Michael, that I'm taking your phrase there on that. Look at what people in the space are doing. Their actions are going to speak much more than what they might say here or what they said 12 months ago. Look at the Bitcoin dev mailing list. How often, some people might still be in denial of it, but it's evident within just Google Bitcoin dev mailing list. Look and see, okay, hey, they're paying attention to it. Same, fill in the blank, Ethereum, Solana, any of these projects, they're all still paying attention. They might have different interpretations and different ways they think they can execute in handling it or fill in the blank for it, but they're all at least starting to look at the elephant in the room and being like, okay, I think that is a problem. They might not solve it in a way that we think is actually getting to the heart of actually helping solve it for their project in the long term. And what we're saying in general is look at everything. Don't just look at one piece of content. Look at our content that you've came across, whether you came across a blog of ours, a prior video, some of our content that we're putting out in terms of our roadmap, where we're going with QRL 2.0, but also just look in general of what our government's doing, what are people doing in general, and what are the foremost experts What's NIST saying? So I know we touched a little longer on that one, which I think that was just the idea of, timeline for classical blockchains already being too late. I want to cover this next one here for listeners. You mentioned this briefly. Is there anything else you wanted to add on this one, which is not all coins will migrate? Anything to add on this one? And we can expand on this for the listeners as well.
This is pretty common knowledge, and they can be researched and verified pretty easily. There's been projects in the past for non-quantum reasons that have required a user transaction in order to migrate to some new version. And I can think of three examples. The examples aren't really important, but essentially, I think it's pretty inarguable that not all coins will migrate. And unfortunately, with like Bitcoin and Ethereum's case, how do you tell the difference between a user that's just sitting on the private key versus a lost private key? And I don't think that you can. I think that what you'll see is you'll start to see narratives built around this. This is what will be said. This is my prediction. It's been X amount of months or years. These coins are obviously lost, or the users have lost the private key or whatever. They will say that the narrative will be that it's obvious that they have no owner. We have no problem in freezing these out and throwing them into the bit bucket and not having them be post quantum secured. They can be cut off. That'll be the narrative. But the reality is that some users just won't perform the transaction. They won't take post quantum security seriously. Maybe they're time locked in a smart contract, or maybe their private key is time locked somewhere physically for whatever reason.
Yeah, fill in the blank example. There's a number of them. Yeah.
Any number of reasons. Not all coins will migrate, and eventually this will lead to with BIP 361, which is pushing essentially freezing coins, which some might call deprecation of lost assets, but I would call property confiscation. And this is really what's attacking this is fundamental to the core ethos or philosophy of blockchain. You're going to start
when it comes to control of this really, it's like in everyone's opinion is different. Obviously, if it comes to being, if that's the necessary step that Bitcoin developers and take in whatever flavor, but it's like the idea of that control goes against the entire ethos of, especially like the decentralized aspect of decentralization, which we'll get to in a minute. And in terms of, well, if they can make this decision, what other decisions? It's like it kind of, when it comes to governments with money printing, it's like that's the whole reason that after the financial crisis is why Satoshi created Bitcoin, to kind of get away from that. And if it comes to a small group of people kind of deciding what is right and what is wrong in terms of it's not only hairy, but it really ties to what it's about at the core anyway. So
so here's the thing. If you study monetary history, be it rune stones from an obscure island, or the dollar through the gold standard, through decoupling of the gold standard, through the Bretton Woods system, essentially when it comes to money and human nature, the original ethos or philosophies eventually start to become compromised in pretty much every system in monetary history. So I think Bitcoin was created in order to be a purist approach, in order to try something new and have ownership be based on cryptography. But what was not foreseen was the the quantum computer threat, I think. And you're going to see the underlying philosophy of Bitcoin start to become attacked. And once you see the attack, you'll see the wordsmithing that goes around it. Of obviously these are users that no longer have private keys. Obviously these are lost coins. You're going to see this wordplay being used, and it's going to justify it. I think it will eventually push. I think it will eventually push into confiscation and then disruption of the core principles. And at the end of the day, this is more philosophical, but at the end of the day, I think this is human nature to always to devalue to essentially devalue money or property, or change the philosophy towards those into the favor of those that have the power to do so.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, I just popped up the after this one with not all coins will migrate. I just popped up for those listening and viewing. Decentralized governance has become a nightmare. So on this one, we just talked a little bit on the part of, wow, this is going to kind of be a hairy problem with fill in the blank. Project insert Bitcoin, insert Ethereum, insert your favorite or your fourth favorite project. What do you want to add on this one for the listener? Maybe give a little added context. We've just been talking on the decentralization or centralized decision-making part of where that can get kind of dicey. But
the quantum computer threat has become very inconvenient for the blockchain ecosystem. If you're a sufficiently large organization that has a lot of capital stuck into Bitcoin, you're going to have a strong incentive to discredit the threats despite the facts. And Bitcoin is running at scale, and though in large organizations and central authorities that own a lot of Bitcoin, that have influence over consensus of what does get changed. I think a lot of that influence probably happens underground. But I think it's inevitable human nature that influence has to exist. Governments is going to become a nightmare.
It's also going to be, it's like, not only, like you said, it's from governments to large organizations to, like, from the US, I don't know, fill in the blank. El Salvador, years back with, making, adopting Bitcoin as legal tender, but big Bitcoin holders, the ETF one you said, where it's like you have derivatives of derivatives, and, it just gets messy of, well, how is it all
if we knew the state of quantum computers to certainty, and there were just a clean fix that didn't violate the underlying philosophy of Bitcoin, this wouldn't really be a problem. People would be able to come together and say, okay, I think this is what's best for the ecosystem. It's all of the uncertainty, and it's all the uncertainty around quantum computers, and the fact that fixing the quantum computer threat is not clean. There's no clean way to migrate all of the coins over without making some underlying philosophical or technical or technical compromise. There's no way around it. Whether there are different approaches, be it zero knowledge proofs or time delayed transactions. All of these require user initiated transactions. So the user has to do something, and eventually someone's going to have to say, okay, well, these users are obviously not alive anymore. These users have obviously abandoned their coins. These users obviously aren't invested enough and don't care about their whatever it is that they're going to say. And that the fact that there's no clean solution makes the governments a nightmare, because you have too many opinions, and you have to reach consensus. The world has to reach consensus on what the future of Bitcoin looks like. And this is completely different than an IT organization where you have, let's say, 20 to 30 different engineers that can all get into a room and then hash out a solution and talk to each other and have FaceTime day to day. It has nothing. That's a centralized organization. The comparisons
and they can move it. They just
are ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's just a nightmare, and Bitcoin changes to Bitcoin take forever to implement. They're notoriously difficult.
I want to jump to one. This is another one that's specific to the topic at hand here, which is we're just touching on. This is RWAs, that stands for real world assets, are also at risk. So for viewers, this could be anything from, you know, art, real estate, stuff tied to the real world. Why, Strike, in your opinion, why are real world assets, RWAs, also at
Well,
risk here? Obviously, I know why, but I want to just expand
yeah,
expand
so
this.
I don't see this one talked a whole lot about, but I think I'm not raising an alarm on it, but I'm bringing it up as an interesting talking point. In that the real world assets that are tied to ERC20 ownership, for example, are fractional real world assets, where you essentially own something in the physical world based on the fact that you have that token
Yeah, let's
in
use a
your
house
wallet.
for an example. That's a kind of very a little visceral if you think about
A
the
house
negative
or a
implications of it. But
Ferrari,
yeah,
sorry, Lambo or whatever.
yeah, but fill in the blank. Yeah,
I did some quick research, and institutional real world assets are valued at around, according to some Grok searching, are valued at around 51 billion. And nobody ever had this isn't ever talked about, that real that quantum computers have the ability to potentially have the ability to let's call it reappropriate ownership from one person to another person, as as if you were signing the title to a car. Like I said, I'm not sounding the alarm bells, but I
no,
think that's it's
you,
an
what
interesting.
yeah,
It's a realistic, interesting
what you're jamming
threat.
on is it's as you think, just as you would understand of like, okay, hey, you have the title to a house or something else, or you have ownership of a piece of property or something. It's like, okay, you hold that, but it's if it's held just specifically from a smart contract that is vulnerable, and it's written into the like, hey, who controls that? So it's just
Ownership is tied to whether or not you have the private key. That's how ownership is defined with real
yeah.
world assets. So on top of the $2.5 trillion, you also have this potential real world asset uh, uh, risk exposure.
Yeah,
No one
the
ever
next
talks about that on crypto Twitter. I thought about it the other day a little bit. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. So this one now that I'll read it out for everyone is this is either the store now or harvest now and decrypt later. Uh we were touching on this. You think it's a misused phrase. Do you think it's misused in terms of it's just broadly painted over and people are using it in the wrong way of thinking? First off, explain what it is for the viewer, and then we can talk on how you think
So
it's
store now,
misused in
decrypt
general.
later, or harvest now, decrypt later is what it really means is harvesting packets off of a network of ciphertext, which comes down to a much broader quantum computer threat that includes blockchain, but is much bigger than blockchain. It gets used quite a bit. I think it gets used quite a bit, misused quite a bit in crypto Twitter, crypto X, because the essentially the store now decrypt later is really the blockchain equivalent, is really the ledger of the blockchain itself. The public keys are already on chain.
Mhm.
So it doesn't really apply to blockchain. It really doesn't really apply to blockchain as much as it does apply to intelligence gathering or decryption of encrypted packets that either be it on the internet or wherever it is that they're being harvested now. We need to just use Wireshark as an example, but it doesn't necessarily really apply to blockchain. It kind of drives me nuts a little bit when I see it, but that's just a personal opinion. It's
Got it.
arguable.
Yeah, I'll jump to the next one. For those that are viewing this, we've kind of been going through. If you've been with us for a little bit, we got a couple more good ones to go to. If you just joined us in the last few minutes, Michael and I from the QRL core team are going through a host of what we're calling kind of a lot of the inconvenient and candid truths about migrating fill in the blank blockchain to post quantum security. So I'm going to jump to the next one here, and this talks
On the
on.
last one, the store now decrypt later has more to do with PKIC, public key infrastructure
Yeah.
cryptography, than it really does blockchain. But
No, thanks for adding that.
it's
The
nuanced. It
Yep.
doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah. So the next one, title wise, this we've had a number of past episodes where we touch on some of the pros and cons, freeze camp, no freeze camp. What we had Hunter Beast from BIP 360 on with us to kind of jam on that in this last month. This title here is The Inevitable Freeze, Confiscation of Assets. What do you got? What's your take here on this in terms of what's the truth within this, or the nugget that is kind of really important for people when they're thinking about post quantum security and fill in the blank project
Don't know
that
the future for certain. Ultimately, like I said before, I see forks in the future, and two of those forks that I do see are the freeze and the no freeze camp. The
yeah.
freeze camp being that non-migrated Bitcoin assets become confiscated and are not part of the new hard fork.
Yep.
The other fork being that they become part of they stay on chain, and it just becomes survival of the fittest of who has the quantum computer, and they can steal them if they want to.
Yeah.
But I think institutional interest in Bitcoin has become so large that I think that it's probably inevitable that whatever fork does end up of Bitcoin will probably be a freeze camp fork, in order to, at the cost of the minority of users, they might consider half of Bitcoin to be Bitcoin dust. Right, the influence at that level over consensus. I think we're looking at a freeze camp eventually as a dominant Bitcoin fork, perhaps in
Method.
3 to 4 years, maybe. And that's going to rewrite philosophy as far as the philosophical principles of Bitcoin. If you can freeze coins or confiscate coins, maybe and the philosophy starts to become compromised. And this is all in monetary history. Just takes one event to start to undermine core principles. Maybe 21 million doesn't necessarily need to be 21 million anymore. I mean,
or just
maybe there's an interesting word play on. Maybe it should be 42 million, and here's why. Or any other number of compromises to the underlying principles are at play. Either way, post quantum security is moving to post quantum security in all circumstances attacks the underlying philosophy of blockchain principles in order to make it fully post quantum secure, based on legacy classical transactions. It's an attack at the core.
And it's an attack at the potentially the confidence overall of
course.
Yeah. So what I'm going to pop up on screen real quick here. We got one or two more of these good ones to get to while we're waiting for that. Next section after we cover some of the other parts on actually the truths of moving over, migrating to post quantum security for different projects. After this, we're going to cover our Q&A, which we call Superposition Society. So if you have any questions that you want us to potentially cover, we're coming up on the hour here, but we might be able to answer a couple as we wrap up here. Drop in any
plan in place to make purchasing QRL easier for people in the US.
Jump into the Discord community. Let me jump in. I just wanted to pop it up a little ahead of time as a quick precursor. I'm going to jump back to, so if you have any questions, drop them in. I'm going to jump. I got one more of these to cover here while anyone drops some questions. Michael, I have one more here I'm going to share on screen that I think is important for the viewers to cover, which is CRQCs, cryptographically relevant quantum computers, will rewrite blockchain principles. We've talked on this in a couple of the topics above. Any last parts before we jump into a little bit of brief Q&A as we're wrapping up on the hour? Anything else for viewers that are listening to this point? What you've just listened to us unpack is a lot of the aspects that you've probably heard little morsels of projects saying we're doing this or that, but we've really touched on the more of the specifics of why it might not work out as well for 99% of the projects in the wild in practice, because of some of these constraints, that whether something is an ERC20 and the project is, they're kind of stuck to whatever the underlying project does, or even for projects that say they're post quantum in a way, there's still vulnerabilities there. Anything to add to this title here, which is the CRQCs?
I want it to be known that I have the utmost respect for the creativity and ingenuity of blockchain developers.
Yeah.
They
Even in the
have
last
come
couple
up
months, we've seen some cool stuff. Yeah.
from zero knowledge proofs to the commit delay, time delay, transaction mechanisms. They've come up, and there were 2 or 3 others. I can't remember what they're technically called, but they've come up with some solutions which all have some fatal flaw. But they've come up with solutions that I never would have thought of. So I want it to be known that I have the utmost respect for developers. However, uh, of all of the solutions of all of the proposed solutions I've seen, even with zero knowledge proofs, even with the commit delay, rebuild mechanisms, delayed transactions, all of these solutions still have flaws, most of which are the user has to go in and do something once or twice, be it create a cryptographic proof today in order to be able to spend tomorrow, in order to show that, in order to make the quantum post-quantum transaction. The problem is that there is no pure approach. There is no purest approach online that I have seen in the past 6 years that does not have some critical flaw that underlines the philosophical or ethos uh, uh, foundation of blockchain principles.
Yeah.
So and that's really the problem, and this is really why we created QRL, is to be a principles first, security first, post quantum secure blockchain since the first block, and that's why we exist. So put your comment. This is going on. This is on YouTube. We're on live on YouTube. Drop your comments Drop your comments. If you have a different opinion, please drop them in your comments. Also, you can reach me on X Strike
Twitter
underscore.
X on Discord, a vibrant community there. We pulled
Also QR Ledger is the project team.
Yeah, and if you have a question too, please ask. What Michael and I do is we have a number of questions. 2 I'll pop up in a minute are ones that people ask between our last episode and this one, so as to populate a couple of the Q&As that came in where someone maybe directly asked either of us a question via DM, or if you have any in that you just want to cover. And there's no dumb questions either. If you have a question that's maybe around,
no dumb questions.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot to cover. It's a rabbit hole within a rabbit hole. Michael, I'm going to pop up. So I'm going to pop up one question on screen, and then I got a couple others. I'll answer this first one right here. Let me just. This one is is there a plan in place to make purchasing QRL easier, especially people in the U.S.? Really specific. First off, our show, as we've always said for many years, is created for educational and informational, purposes only. So this is not investment advice by any means. The best place for anyone that's just looking for on-ramping on this specific question or questions with similar flavors to this, go to QRL.org markets page. They have all the information there, and then you can see based on the geographic region you're in, what might be the best place if that's your cup of tea and you're looking for something there. I got a couple other questions, Michael. I wanna pop up 1 or 2, and then while we're answering those, we can see if we can maybe get to 1 or 2 more before we finish. This one, I'll read it out. After learning about the quantum threat in QRL, I realized most of my current crypto assets were at risk to quantum. Can Bitcoin, Ethereum, and others become quantum resistant like QRL without the caveats? You want to answer this one first? I'll see if I can piggyback onto this one at all. What we've already answered this in different variations over episodes, but anything to add to this one for the viewer? It sounds like they're a holder of crypto, but just general advice.
There is no, what I was saying before is there is no pure approach to going post-quantum secure with legacy DSAs and legacy transactions. The immutability of blockchain itself was one of the innovations that Satoshi came up with. It allows you to replay all of the transactions and verify the ledger yourself.
Yeah,
that's what immutability of blockchain was for. The problem was that immutability, which was part of the innovation, was not post-quantum secure in that transactions, Bitcoin specifically, have transactions that are classical transactions where the public key is written directly to the chain and the funds haven't moved in years, and that public key itself is susceptible to compromise by a sufficiently powerful quantum computer or a CRQC. So no, they all have caveats. I think
Yep.
that's a lot of these caveats and problems. I don't think that blockchain or Bitcoin, I don't think that it dies. What I think happens is that its underlying principles become compromised. Now, what concerns me is the degree of what that compromises look like, and how the scope of those compromises and the size. The block of what we consider to be blockchain today likely will not be what we consider to be the same values of blockchain in the next 5 to 7 years. Compromises will have to be made. And when you start to make compromises, you attack the integrity. And once you start to attack the integrity, it sets a precedent. And it's human nature to allow that precedent to justify for those that have the sufficient have allowed enough voice or have the sufficient capital to use that justification for further justification in order to further self-interest. And I think that this is philosophically the underlying problem that blockchain faces, and one of the most systemic threats within the next 5 years.
Yeah. I'll pull up one on screen. I don't know if this is more of a developer question. This one was, I'll pull up this, and then I got one more that we pre-pulled. I'll show this one on screen. Can QRL ever have a TPS faster than 1,000? Any?
I'm not a.
Yeah.
You know what? I honestly don't know. I'd have to ask the devs on that one.
Jump into Discord. Ask in Discord if you have a question. Not saying just specifically this question.
Yeah,
ask any variations of speed and yeah. Next one I want to jump to, I'll pop it up on screen and I'll read it out for viewers as well, is this next question. And I know we're getting a little over the hour mark, so I'll cover one or two more here. This one, Michael and Ryan, why do you think many longtime Bitcoiners, developers, and influencers are still blind to this quantum problem? Self-interest, denial, all of the above, something else? Give me your perspectives. Thanks very much. I'll open this one up, and you can maybe just add to this one. I definitely think it's, as many of you probably think, it's definitely a combination of all of the above. We've definitely seen, I use that Bitcoin dev mailing list as an example either. I've been in the blockchain space, for quite some time as well. And early on, especially, you had some very prominent OG Bitcoin developers and just those in the space, or key opinion leaders, whatever you want to call the key opinion leader parts, or influencer, whatever you fill in the blank. But there were so many people that were flat out publicly saying on podcast episodes, even 3 years ago, 6 years ago, especially, that were just saying, this quantum thing, it is 20, 30 years away. You're crazy to think otherwise. Many of those same people have been publicly now being part of these groups that are, whether it's a person, I'm not going to name names here, but someone that might come up and say, okay, they might be a part of one of these latest BIPs. And a couple years ago, they were kind of saying, hey, this is funny. So I think that for those, maybe Adam Back or anyone else,
I think that's
they're a lot. Some people are financially incentivized to just be in denial. Others are just been so pot committed on whether on a building front or on a project front that they're just, they eat, sleep, and breathe Bitcoin, that anyone that has any idea that could potentially attack them is just their, Looney Tune. And you think it's, that's never going to happen. And then I think what's going to end up happening over time is that, as we've already been seeing, as some of the dominoes start to fall, people start to realize like, wow, this is something that cannot be ignored any longer. I want to just make a random analogy or suggestion of, if you Google, there's a video of a summer concert and years back, and it's a video of a random guy in his own that is just, he's dancing, kind of weird dancing at a summer concert. He's dancing by himself. And at first, everybody's kind of looking and laughing and saying, look at this guy just dancing on his own. He's kind of crazy. Slowly but surely, a couple other people decide to join him. and they start dancing with him. And before you know it, a few dozen people start dancing with him. And before you know it, the entire concert fan base is all dancing with this guy. And the reason I use this analogy is we can use this guy as one of the first people, this, let's say that's people that believe in this, that the quantum threat is real and that it's something needs to be done about it. And each person that joins to dance in is finally being like, you know what? This is something that I should be paying attention to. So it's apt in that sense. Obviously, we're talking about, if you just Google it on YouTube, type in like random guy dancing at a summer holiday or concert, but it's applicable in the sense of how people start to adopt, the adoption bell curve at scale of early adopters, the main group, the bell laggards, and et cetera. But the reason I say that is that we're already seeing this with Bitcoin developers coming around. And if you see smarter and smarter people around you that are all starting to take it seriously, you're pretty dumb to not pay attention as well. So we still have a long way to go. But to answer this user in the community's question, I think that's a big
There is a
reason
clear
why.
vector that's formed.
Yeah. So
It's
I'll
moving in one-
I'll
it is
end there
moving
as
in
we
one
wrap
direction
out.
of post-quantum.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything to add to this one, Michael? I know I went a little long on that one.
No, and you got it. The direction, the vector is headed in the direction of migrating towards post-quantum security.
Yeah.
That's the direction. It's not reversing. It's
Yeah.
gaining momentum. And I
Yeah.
think that says something, and I think that that's inarguable if you just look at the facts.
Yep. And we're getting, as we alluded to, as Michael said earlier, we're not just starting to talk on quantum because it's a sexy topic or that people are talking about it. We've been publicly
Is it
talking on it.
sexy yet? I don't know.
I mean, yeah.
It still doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, but we've been talking on it for a really long time, and I think an important part for people to realize is that from 2018, since the Genesis block, we've had this. It's core to the foundation of what our project's about. So if you're viewing this longtime user, obviously you're already in the community, you already know the best places to kind of jump in and learn a bit more. But obviously, the QRL.org is a great starting point. You can venture from there. As Michael alluded to, we're just around the corner from a really exciting part in our roadmap of where we're going with, QRL right now in testnet, moving into mainnet. So I'm just sharing on screen here, test dash or zon.theqrl.org. You can check out some of the, documentation.
We are in testnet for QRL 2.0 for the users that are new to this. You can start building today and take your project that's running on Ethereum, have first mover advantage in a pure quantum secure environment. You can start to test that out today, and you can hit the ground running and
have it ready
with DeFi when we have QRL 2.0 that hits live. And we're in the process of finishing up 2 independent auditors. So we've taken this seriously. The project is serious. No one else in the ecosystem has done put as much time, effort, or ingenuity into solving this problem in a pure way. And just by the fact that we have Trail of Bits and Halborn as our independent auditors, show that we're serious about this. So
yeah,
it's on you. It's on the community. It's on you guys to we made this as easy as possible.
Yeah. So if when you're viewing this right now,
Here's the world.
First off, pat on the back. If you're tuning into this, as we said on prior episodes, pat on the back. You're very early in the sense, and it's still early innings. I think if you are a builder, do as Michael said. You don't need to wait until mainnet's here. You can start to jump in, testnet, read the documentation, see that you can take a body of work that you've already done, bring it in a way, and have a great first mover advantage there. The opportunities are endless and a little bit of a blue ocean in terms of what you can build as well. Do you want to build something that is tied to, something with DeFi, a game, a tool, something of utility there, something that you've already built for a Solidity smart contract. And then you're like, hey, I want this to have legs and live long term. If you are someone that's more maybe on the retail side, hey, continue watching some additional content, do your homework, and every few weeks, myself and Michael and other members from our core team, we're present and front facing and going to continue to be sharing all the exciting news we've just shared in recent live shows of the progress that Michael alluded to, which we're working with two, best in class auditors that are independently in parallel auditing our project. We're continuing to push forward towards mainnet, and there's just a lot of exciting stuff coming up about. And for those viewing and to you, Michael, it's always, I know we talk a lot internally and we're excited about all the progress, but as always, it's always great to share that with the viewers, both in our community and those that are looking at the space. Whether you came across us learning about us from the recent Google paper and we're like, man, I kept seeing this QRL name. What are they about? Or whether you've been following us for a while and being like, hey, I want to know and have confidence in a project that has real human beings, an intelligent, smart core team that's continuing to make progress for the long term. That's what we're about at the QRL. So, Michael, always great to have you with me.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, until the next episode, be sure to keep those digital assets post-quantum secure. And myself and Michael will see you in the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye-bye.